Hello.
Hey, Walter.
Hey, Phil. For some reason, I don't know how to do the video.
There's a button on. Do you have the app up or are you using it on the web browser?
I'm using the web browser.
I don't know if I can help. I know how to use the app a little bit better. Like on the app, I have a button on the bottom left that says Start Video. So
Yeah,
probably see me.
I can see you now, but for some reason, click if you want to switch to a different microphone. So how's your day going, buddy?
Going well. Definitely been a little bit better week. Just trying to keep juggling everything, as you well know.
Yeah, Juggle is our, I think it's our middle name.
Doesn't it seem like sometimes life is just a big game of figuring out how to best utilize your own time and utilize yourself?
You're exactly right about that. And I have no idea what in the world I need to do this. Well, my thing is I don't want to break it. Come on. I have no idea. Here, let's see. View, meeting. Why is it not? Well, I guess we might just have to go with Walter Russell sitting there like that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. And I don't know if it's because I was recording this, if that's part of the problem. So I have no idea. Did you invite your brother?
I think it's just going to be me tonight.
Okay. So how's your dad doing?
Like with everything, with the changes, or
Just life general, you know.
life? Seems to be doing well. I mean, we completely got out of that client I told you.
Yeah.
And that was about half of his time.
Okay.
So he's still kind of adjusting to having a full work week now without going. He basically went and contracted with them 2 days a week and then worked on his own stuff the other 3 days, and it was just kind of choppy.
Okay.
So we transitioned some stuff to him and are kind of going through all that. And the last couple of weeks we've been dealing with these loans a lot, which is kind of derailed like our normal stuff.
Exactly. What's up, Aaron? How you doing, buddy?
Hey, WR, what's happening, brother?
Nothing. Just trying to make it happen. For some reason, I see your flag, but my video is not showing the way it should be, but
Is it on my end or your end?
it's my end.
Okay. I saw Phil there for a second, but he disappeared too.
Well, you are out in Cleveland, so. So crazy things happen out in Cleveland.
Yeah, no kidding. Phil, I live in the middle of nowhere, and when Walter comes out, he says I live in Cleveland. So.
It takes like an hour to get to his house from my house, so.
Yeah, it does.
And that's where I'm like, well, shucks, I can be in Cleveland faster, so. So for some reason, I don't know how we're going to do all this, but we'll just do it. And you know what I might have to do is I might have to log in on my phone. So
Are you at the house or the office?
I'm at the house, down in the basement in the hole. So I sent about like 20 plus invites to guys at church, just to try to get us connected and, you know, see what we can do and kind of go from there. So I have no idea who's going to show up, you know, and we'll just go from there. You know what, Phil, can I do this since you're going to speak? Do you mind if I send you this PowerPoint? Or not a PowerPoint, just this PDF?
You want me to share my screen with everybody?
Yeah, if you don't, I mean, if you don't mind, because for some reason, without trying to get rid of the call, I don't want to, you know, kind of mess this up. I'm not the most IT savvy person in the whole wide world. Do you mind if I send that to you?
Yeah, I was waiting for it. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Not a problem. All right, give me a second. I have to find it. It's just a PDF, and I think there's like 5 things on it. Send. Kevin, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing
Hey,
good.
what's up, Kev?
How are you guys?
Good.
Hey, Gravy.
Hey.
How is this?
I got a John's. I don't know who John is. Muted. Oh man, we got guys showing up. Alicia's here. Phil, did that come up?
I haven't gotten your email yet.
Ryan, how you doing, buddy? It went.
Okay.
Hey, Brian, what's going on, man?
What's going on, guys? How you guys doing?
Good.
Good, yourself?
Good, brother.
Doing good.
Titus, Rich, how you doing? Oh, Rich with the beats, man. I love the beats.
Look at there. Haddock, my wife and I were just asking. We haven't heard from you in a couple of weeks, man. We thought we would make sure you were still alive.
He's playing video games, Aaron, so I don't think he heard you. Phil, did that email come in?
I didn't share my screen.
Okay. All right, guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get started.
It just showed up on my screen, Walter.
Okay. Got a lot of things to get after. So if you guys don't mind, I'm going to open with prayer real quick, and if other guys join, they'll just keep on rocking and rolling because I want to be mindful of your time. So, Father, we just come before you, number one, thanking you for who you are in this season, Father. I know that some of us feel isolated and we're not engaging with our brothers and sisters at church, but we know that you're there. You're here to comfort us, to give us ideas, direction. So, Father, we just ask that you be with us this time and let us just go forth, Father, in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
So the Lord kind of put this on me a while back about trying to get some businessmen together. I know that Eric Traylor, he's my mentor. He relocated to Florida, and ever since he relocated to Florida, the Businessmen's Network kind of fizzled. I know that Phil Kirkendall has actually been doing some small little things with a couple of guys. So I figured, you know what, this is a great time since we are isolated. And guys, I apologize for some reason my video's not showing, so that's why you see my name, but I'm here in person and everything else like that. So Phil, if you can go to the next slide. So what I always like to do is just to cover a couple of bases. I've got a couple of scriptures to go over. Proverbs 27:17. It says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And in Proverbs, there's 3 scriptures that talk about multitude of counselors. You guys can do research, on Proverbs, but it says, where there is no counsel, the people fail, but in multitude of counselors, there is safety. So what those things mean to me, I belong to Aaron Ward's fire team. I believe as God deploys us on missions, whether it's financial, whether it's in our home life, we need each other. We need each other to bounce off ideas. As men, we might be going through some problems with our family or our kids. We need each other to rely on. And as we go through this season and everything that's happening, I think we all need to just kind of get together and rely on each other because we all are at different levels in our business and in our walk. And I believe this is an opportunity that we can flourish and grow. Granted, we all started this year off in 2020 with a whole bunch of ideas, goals, and visions. And I don't know about you guys, it seems like, man, things have gotten wrecked. I don't even know where the goals are. I'm not even looking at them. I'm just trying to survive day by day. And some days I've been walking around not knowing what the day of the week is and everything else like that. So if you guys feel that way, give me a shout out. Give me a thumbs up if sometimes you guys feel like right now that things are kind of dragging. Good. So if you can go to the next slide. So I'm just going to talk about an economic update. Today I had an opportunity to speak with an old colleague of mine. He's a chief economic officer, or he was a chief economic officer at JP Morgan Chase. And as we were talking, we were just going over what's going on. And I'm not here to push anything, talk about stocks or anything. I believe, part of being multitude of counselors, if we are realistic in understanding what's happening in the economy, then we can kind of go from there. Our keynote speaker tonight is Phil. He's a CPA, and we'll go into that as well. If you can go to the next slide, Phil. So I don't know if you guys have heard about the CARE Act that was passed. I forget, like a couple of weeks ago, where the United States government and the Treasury, they put in about $2 trillion into the economy to try to sustain or add a bridge on what's actually going on. If you can go to the next slide. As a result of this, because of our social distancing, I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is what's at stake right now. 19% of our GDP is at stake because that's based off of consumer spending. As you can see on this map, when you look at hotels, transportation, entertainment, restaurant and bars, and retail food and beverage, all that portion of our economy is at stake, which is around $4.1 trillion. And this was based on 2019 numbers. Then if you look at the employment industry, that $4.1 trillion affects 20% of our jobs. And as you can see, that's a huge loss in our economy. And that's part of the reason why the government is pumping all this stimulus. Today, they did another $2 trillion in stimulus. I don't know if you guys heard that or saw that go across the wire. But so if you really look at it, we're about $4 trillion that the United States government has put into place to help bridge the gap on what's actually going on. Next slide, Phil. And as a result of that, interest rates have dropped. This slide right here shows interest rates since 1958 till 2019. Interest rates have been dropping. So if any of you guys are on this line, I talked about at the Men's Summit, if you've got a mortgage over 4%, this is a great time to look at refinance. I know that there's a couple of guys at church that do refinancing. If you're interested, feel free to shoot me a text. If you have real estate or rental properties, because those are in the commercial side, those are usually at a higher interest rate. I'd reach out to somebody about looking at refinancing at this point in time because the rates, they can't go any lower. If they're going to go lower, they're going to be negative. Next slide. And as a result of that, unemployment wages are going up. So this morning, jobless claims went out. Those are the amount of people that have applied for unemployment benefits. I think we were at 6.6 million people applied last week for unemployment benefits. I think last week prior to that, we had another 6 million people apply for that. And those are all those people that are in those service industries that we're looking at. And kind of going from there. So as a result of that, we're anticipating we can have an unemployment amount anywhere from 10 to 20% of the people that are going to be unemployed. Next slide, Phil. So what I'm going to have Phil do, and I'll have Phil do his own little commercial. Phil's a CPA. I don't know if you guys know that or not. He used to work for you can tell the company, Phil, but Phil's a CPA. He's a brother in the Lord. Him and I have played basketball together. We've eaten chicken wings together. We've done a lot of things together, and we do life. You know, he's on the dream team. Him and his wife serve in the cafeteria. I figured right now, with all the economic stimulus, there's a lot of programs that are going out, and why not have somebody who's an expert CPA talk about this? And if you guys have questions, this is an opportunity to talk to somebody. If you want to get his information offline, that's why I put that up there. You take down his phone number, that's his cell number, and his email, and he can talk to you about, you know, some of the different things that he has. So I'll turn it on over to you, Phil.
As Walter mentioned.
You there?
Yep, I am. I was just grabbing a piece of paper. So just to give you a quick background on what on my background. I spent about 6 years at a public accounting firm. It's called Clark Schaefer Hackett over at Easton. Pretty large firm, in the top 100 in the country. And I did a lot of real estate accounting and a lot of partnership taxation. So kind of got tired of the public accounting route completely and went out on my own and joined a family business that does outsource accounting. And we've kind of taken our business model the last few years and really focused on cloud accounting solutions, and we act as an outsourced CFO for people. So we'll oversee their whole process, advise them during as they're running their business, help them make decisions, really try to get their processes efficient. And I also do some taxes as well. So Walter asked me to talk a little bit about the Paycheck Protection Program, which has been a lot in the news. I don't know, I guess, can I get a show of hands? Has anybody actually gone through that whole process already? No? Okay. So I'll show you what my notes were. I've gone through it. I'm now in my third time with a client going through this loan process. And I guess I just wanted to go through some highlights. If you have specific questions, feel free to ask. But I'm just going to kind of hit certain points. I've noticed that the application process varies by bank. We went through this with 2 clients right away on Friday when everything opened. Nobody really knew what was going on, and they changed the rules like Friday morning. And we had one bank that didn't hardly ask for anything. They had a single spreadsheet that they asked us to fill out, and that was it. Another one wanted to know who all the owners were, all their information. They wanted to know what your reserves were. They wanted to know, another one just today asked for a hold harmless agreement. So it's kind of all over the map. So if you go to your bank that you're currently with, which is where I'd recommend starting, just kind of be prepared for anything. Generally speaking, before I have gone to these banks, I've had certain things ready to go that I knew they would want. And as the time has passed, they put a lot more information on their websites about what they do want you to have and not have. So the big thing is payroll, obviously. So the purpose of this program was to keep people off of unemployment. And the way they're doing that is they're going to basically give forgivable loans to people to help cover payroll costs. Now, there's several things that kind of go into that number. First of all, it's only for salaries under 100,000. I put cash compensation. I don't know if you can even see this very well, but basically they won't give you a loan for a salary over $100,000. And so if you had somebody that made 120, then you have to back out 20,000 on that when you're doing this computation. They don't want to include the employer-paid federal taxes. So, as an employer, you're going to pay your Social Security and Medicare tax. That doesn't count toward what your amount is. And the whole purpose of this loan calculation is to figure out what's your maximum loan. You're allowed to include state and local taxes assessed on compensation, which is like state unemployment. And then on top of the salary, you can include healthcare and 401k payments and that can be above and beyond the 100,000. And so really what they're doing is they're saying, all right, what was your average payroll for the last 12 months? Or what was your average payroll per month in 2019? And they're asking you to submit, payroll tax returns to confirm that, payroll journal. They're also asking for support on your healthcare benefits that you're providing to employees, and same for 401k stuff. It's a little trickier with self-employed individuals. I haven't gone through that process yet, but they're saying that they're allowed to participate in this program. And it makes sense because the program does not cover subcontract labor. So if I'm a business, I'm only going to get enough money to cover my own employees for about 8 weeks. That doesn't really help me if I have zero income and I still have to pay my subcontractors. And they're expecting those subcontractors, if they need it, to be able to go get the loan themselves. So, how do you get that number if you have a payroll and you're just kind of, it's, a sole proprietor? And, the language in there that I've seen has talked about net earnings from self-employment. So if you're a sole proprietor, you have a Schedule C on your 1040, and that number that would be on your most recent return, that bottom number is probably the number they're going to look at and say, okay, if you had $50,000 on your Schedule C on last year, that's probably going to be your annual number for this, and you're going to divide that by 12. So then once you get your monthly amount, in both cases, whether it's a business or an individual, you would multiply that by 2.5 times to get your number. That becomes your max loan amount. They may or may not give it to you. We had a couple examples today that I had one client that we submitted their application Friday morning and they got their money today. And I have to believe we were one of the first ones in the door, because another local bank that we've worked with said that there was over 600 applications in the door. I don't know if it was just with that one banker or with their whole bank, but the system has been flooded with people that need it to survive, but also people that are just like fearful and still going after it because it's a free money grab. There's really no other way to put that. So,
hey Phil.
Yeah.
How much, if you don't mind me asking, you don't have to tell the client, how much did the client receive when you applied for that?
They got almost exactly what we applied for, and it was about $88,000.
Okay.
It's a business with 10 employees. They do interior design work. And then I've got another one that's like almost through the process, and they were asking for $250,000. Interesting thing about this program is that nonprofits and churches are able to use it as well. And we have a church client that actually went through this process too, and they're they were the example of they didn't get what they asked for due to some of the tax rules on housing for ministers. So we're still kind of working through all of that, but it's been all over the map. I've seen this wasn't a direct client of mine, but a related party of one of my clients or their investors, they had gone through this process, and that particular bank they were trying to figure out if the amount was going to be forgiven right away. And so they made you go through a lot more computations than some of the other banks. And they ended up giving somebody the amount that they could have forgiven instead of what their max loan was. So how does that happen? So your max loan's based on historical payroll, but what if your company has grown? Then your payroll right now is more than it was when you did this calculation. And also you can include rent and utilities and mortgage interest as part of the forgivable amount. So those numbers aren't included in the original what's my max loan amount, but they can be used as part of the proceeds of the loan. So that's how you could have a situation where you could have more eligible expenses basically than what you could actually get. And in that situation, they said they got what their the forgivable loan was, what they could potential expenses were instead of just their maximum loan. I don't know why that happened, but it's been interesting to see how this is all working. So the debt forgiveness piece, everybody's been kind of running at this with like, oh, the government's definitely gonna forgive it, and they should if you follow the process. But you're gonna have to be prepared to certify that you spent the money on what they're wanting you to spend it on. So the first thing is payroll. You have to spend at least 75% of the loan, on payroll to get it forgiven. Now, I say that, I think if you go, like, let's say you spent 60% of the loan on payroll. I don't think that they're going to just say, we're not going to forgive anything, but it's going to reduce the amount. All of these things kind of are going to interplay together. So we're just telling people, make sure you use at least 75% of it for payroll.
Do you want? Which one do you want to watch? Kids? Season 1 or season 2?
Season 3, Rich.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Phil.
The other thing is this full-time employee comparison. So what I've seen so far is that they're going to compare what your employee count was last year around February 15th to June 30th of 19, and then they're going to look at what your full-time employee count was this year at that time. And it kind of harms businesses that have already decreased before this happened, because they could effectively have a loss of full-time employees. And let's say that they had 4 employees and now they have 3. Well, then only 75% of their, amount is going to be forgiven of their eligible costs, if that makes sense. So that's something to keep in mind. They really are trying to discourage people from letting them go. If you get this loan, you need to do your best to keep all your employees, and you need to keep them at about the same payroll that they were at before. Another thing I didn't put on here is if you drop their pay more than 25% from what it was last year, that's going to also reduce the amount that's forgiven. So I just say those are some things to watch out for. Keep in mind that the employee count, keep good records of what you're using with the money for. You're going to have to prove through, various documents that you did what you said you were going to do with it. I will just briefly mention this EIDL is called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. This is like the normal program if you have a disaster. I've never used it before, honestly, but I know that it's there for, like, let's say there was a hurricane in the South. If somebody's business was destroyed or they lost revenue for 2 months, they could apply for one of these loans. But I think a distinction between this program and the Paycheck Protection Program is that the EIDL, you really have to certify that you need it. And I kind of struggle with that question with the Paycheck Protection Program, because you have to sign a whole page of certifications. Has anybody looked at the loan application for this or not? No? You have, Josh? The second page has a whole list of things that you have to certify that is true. And, most of them are like, you can't get another loan through this program for the rest of the year. And that could change with legislation. We don't know. If they could extend this program, they could say, well, people need more money, so we're going to let them get another loan. But right now, if you get it this one time, you can't get it again. Just make sure that you're aware of the whole using 75% of proceeds for payroll. And then there's another one that's the one that I've struggled with, is that you got to certify that that you have been basically economically harmed by the virus. And that one's really gray. I think, honestly, everybody's like, well, I might be harmed in 2 months, so I'm going to go get the loan right now. It's like, well, I don't know what kind of stuff down the road they're going to come up with to review this, because I'm sure it's ripe with fraud. It's just my my suspicion. Maybe I'm being a little too skeptical, but I think people are just running at it because I can get free payroll for 8 weeks. So another interesting thing, I've not seen this before, but normally when you have a loan that's forgiven, which doesn't happen a ton, but let's say you had a loan with the bank, you would have to pick up that whatever that principal balance that you don't have to pay would normally be taxable income to you. That's not going to be the case with this. So it is like completely free. I mean, it's like a grant that doesn't count toward your taxable income at all, which is interesting. And it's very helpful too for people. I personally wouldn't be surprised if there's more money allocated to this. I know that as of last night or this morning, they were arguing about the amounts and trying to figure out what to do. But I have to believe that there was no way they had enough money allocated to the program.
Yeah, Phil, I think the Treasury Department, Bank of America came out, and I think by 9 o'clock on that initial Friday, they had like $32 billion worth of loan applications, and that was just Bank of America. That wasn't Chase or the other large institutions here in the United States. So there's going to be more money allocated towards this. And this is part of the reason why I wanted to bring this as kind of like our first topic, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, people who have employees, they're allowed to apply now. People who have side hustles, independent contractors, are they allowed to apply on Monday? I forget, what date is that?
I think it was originally set for tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow. And so some of you guys, have your own side hustle. Josh, I'll use for you, for example. This could be something you could look at. You maybe only have one employee, so I would encourage you to look at applying for this. Let's say worst case scenario, they come back to you and say, hey, only 50% of your money is forgiven. Well, I think the interest rates aren't they around 2%, Phil?
It's like 0.5% maybe.
Yeah. And the reason why that's why I talked about interest rates. Let's say you use some of this and you take care of this. When it says mortgages, Phil, does that mean your personal mortgage, or does that mean like rent towards your business, or is that a gray area?
I haven't really counted that question yet. I always took it as business mortgage interest. I haven't gone through this process yet for an individual. I have an idea of how I would do the payroll part, this section, but as far as certifying the bottom half, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah. So I've been encouraging clients that are business owners, side hustlers, whatever you name it, or whatever you call it yourself, realtors. I encourage them to apply for it. Worst case scenario, you don't have to take the money. That's the worst case scenario. But I would recommend that anybody, Phil's here as a resource, reach out to him to at least, if you have questions or concerns, and kind of go from there. Phil, you got more? I'm sorry to interject.
No, I mean, that's mainly it. And unless you got any specific questions or have questions about the process that I've gone through so far with certain folks.
I know that one of the questions a lot of people come up with, can you apply for the PPP and the EIDL?
Yeah, you can, but I think they're trying to roll them up into one. I saw one, like if you're going to use the EIDL for payroll, they want you to put it in with the Paycheck Protection Program. Okay. I don't know that I would. I saw another bank specifically exclude the $10,000. So this $10,000 is like a grant. You don't have to pay it back if you go through this program.
Yes.
That's kind of the only piece of that program that's a grant, where the rest of it you do have to pay back. But I saw a bank reduce the amount of the loan for this program if you got that $10,000.
Correct.
So, in my mind, I would go after this one first if you can, because it does have the opportunity to be forgiven completely. And then, if you needed more, I would consider the other program.
Okay. And my thinking is the main purpose of this is the government needs the economy, because our economy is based off of us, 70% of us consuming, going out, buying cars, buying houses, my wife going to, what does she go to? Home Goods and all these other stores. That's where the economy is based off of. And with the government is stopping the economy based on this virus. At some point in time, I know you guys are all praying that this economy opens back up. at some point in time, the lights are going to be turned back on. And when the lights get turned back on, this is the gap to bridge. So what we're going to do is let's throw it out to questions. I feel like since Phil's here, anybody have any questions?
What's our sales girl's name?
Bueller?
I'll say if you guys end up going through the process and you have any questions when you're trying to fill out the forms and gathering your documents, can certainly help at that point too. You have my contact info, so if you don't, even if you're not quite ready to jump in.
I will add one thing. I went on early, I guess it was last week, as soon as all these, the applications all came out, and everywhere I looked, there's little pop-ups on the internet that said apply for the COVID-19, stimulus package. So I went in and completed the application knowing that, oh my goodness, let's say that they say here, have such and such amount of money. It looked like if you didn't have to take the money like you were saying. But when I'm going through it initially, it said, would you like to be, to apply for the immediate $10,000 grant, which is not, returnable. And it just kept popping up everywhere I'd go. It was showing up. And so I went through and filled that out. And it was interesting because at the end, it didn't send me an email saying that, it's been accepted or anything. I haven't heard anything back. I'm checking with a lot of the other guys that are in the same business that I am. None of them have heard anything, no emails, no replies. And, for some of them were saying that, well, it's like $1,000 per employee that you get granted, and then it caps at 10,000. So if you have a business of 10 people, there's $10,000 free money to kind of help, but you would have to necessarily take out the loan on top of that if you needed to. Does that sound right?
Yeah, Josh, that is the EIDL program that you're referring to.
Right.
And that's what I heard. So I think what's the holdup on that one is the Treasury has one thing written in the law, or the government has one thing, but the SBA, they weren't prepared for all the people to come in and do that. Whereas if it was run through the banks like the PPP, the banks are the ones who are submitting the application. So I think that's part of the hang up, because I did personally apply for that one myself. I applied for it for my wife as well. Then all of a sudden they changed the curveball to, well, hey, you get $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000. And I thought, well, that's not what the law says and everything else like that. So I'm like you. I got this code number. I gave him my checking account number, and I'm like, where's the cash at? So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know, because at first, it looked like in the law, it looked at the very beginning, it's $10,000. You don't have to pay it back. You get it in 3 days. I'm thinking, oh, great. I'd be able to keep my guy that I sub out. I can keep him. I can pay him. He can go out and work. And then, I didn't hear anything. And then I kept seeing these little bits of information come in. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, this maybe they thought they could implement this. And then now they're going, oh, wait, hold on a second. I'm sure there's an overwhelming response.
I'd say correct. Yeah. Would you agree, Phil?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that the PPP run is a little easier to navigate initially because you're dealing with a bank right away. You can go to your local lender, you can work with them, and they're the ones dealing with the Small Business Administration. I think, Walter, I haven't actually done any with the EIDL, but isn't that straight through the SBA?
Yeah.
So
takes 10 minutes to fill.
They were trying to get all these rules and their website and all their information out on this. I'm not that surprised that they haven't gotten the other money out. I was actually surprised that client got money today already. We could pull it out right now.
Cool.
For that other program, which was kind of amazing.
So Phil, one of the questions I'm sure people have been asking, who are the banks that you are finding less, problems you're working with? You said out of your 3 clients, you had the one bank that had the initial form, and the other ones that was kind of like they wanted everything plus plasma.
In all 3 cases, the the client already had, it was already their current bank.
Okay.
So they went to they already had all their accounts there. They had lines of credit with them, and they also had a mortgage across the three of them. And it was completely different how they responded. So you think about, they all three had, generally, the banks had all their information. They were getting financial statements regularly. They're getting they already have, certified that the organization exists, and they're doing all these things because they've already done their loan, work on the other loans. So I can't say I know why one bank went one way and one went the other. They were all three community banks. I haven't dealt with a big bank yet on this.
Cool.
So
quick question. This is Brian Hartney here. So is that the case then? I know Josh, you touched on that, and Walter, you had said that and said, hey, this isn't what's written in the law. So is that the case then, $1,000 per employee? Or did they just get real ambitious and just say 10 grand and then all of a sudden they back it down? So is that what I'm getting?
I think the SBA is looking at it because the Treasury only said, I think it was like $600 million. I forget the dollar amount. I think they're changing the guidelines because so many people are applying and they don't have enough money to send out to everybody. So I think that's part of the problem, because everybody heard was 10 grand free, no grant,
Right.
and everybody's like, just like me, I'm like, hey, let's apply for my wife too, apply for my dog, everybody,
Right. Yeah, I have three LLCs and they have obviously different employee, or 1099 contractors for them. And so that's why I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So, okay.
Yeah. And I would encourage you, Brian, apply for all three, because those are three different entities.
Right. They're all three. Yeah. They're three different LLCs. Question maybe for Phil. Either one of you, I had a couple employees that, like, before all this came down, it was like, hey, look, because I own a car dealership. So it was like, okay, all of a sudden what's going to happen? So there was no sales. And so they did have to go get a different job. So how does that work? Cause do you have an idea? Cause the reason being is because of this virus. I went down from selling 40 cars a month, average 35 to 40 cars a month, to I think last month I did like 9. So I can't pay my guys, my contractors. So do you have an idea of how that would work if I did have the employees? And now, I don't know.
I think it's going to impact the forgivable amount. I think you could still get the loan right now if you wanted to, because that's going to be based upon, your historical payroll. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to look at what your employee count is if you get that money, I would try to get some of those people back, because you need that employee count to be back up in comparison with the prior year in order for you to get the maximum amount forgiven. If that doesn't happen and you can't get them back, then just know that you're going to have to pay that percentage back.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
I did want to kind of go over a few, I guess, Walter, you had mentioned to me earlier this week to just how did you phrase it? What's going to be the new normal?
Yes.
And, this is just my opinion, guys. So I'm open to your thoughts too, but this is just how I see it from an accounting perspective. I think that, number one, our approach to business is going to have to adapt. And I think that we're going to have two responses to this. One's obviously going to be spiritual. I do believe, as Pastor Gary says, that there are going to be opportunities for growth and increase and for us to take territory. And I think that we're going to have to be careful and really listen to the Holy Spirit for that. And something I was reading about, I think it was last week, about Isaac, Genesis 26. It says that Genesis 26:12, says that Isaac planted crops in that land and the same year reaped 100-fold because the Lord blessed him. And if you read a little earlier in that chapter, it's in the middle of a famine, and God specifically told him where to be and what to do, and he followed those instructions and was able to thrive in the middle of a famine. And that really encouraged me because, it's been really hard as in my business to take on new work at this point. Everybody's kind of backed off. And so that kind of blessed me. And the other thing that this whole process did was, where's my relationship with God? Am I really allocating the amount of time and effort to this that I should be? And so I think when I talk about adapting, that's the first thing that comes to mind. But the second thing is our part to play. We call it our natural response. I have several things that, I do this with people when I'm overseeing their finances. I harp on all of these things that I'm going to tell you, but I think it's very, very important to think about now. So number one, I say be prepared and know your numbers. I don't believe this is going to be the last time that we experience a shaking like this in the economy in our lifetimes. I just don't. Just things keep happening. And so, I think that you just need to be aware of where you're at any given time and not just wait until, every few months I just check in on where I'm at. I've got money in my account. Like, you really need to know and be focused with your attention. The second thing is, I think that this is an opportunity for us to refine our processes and become more efficient. It's definitely forced me to look at, well, what am I doing now? How can I, either stretch things out and generate more revenue at this point while cutting my costs, or generate the same amount of revenue and keep my costs down. So there's going to be we're going to have to come up with some creative ideas to do that. The third thing that I look at is liquidity. And I'm always monitoring for people their cash reserves. I like to have a couple months in cash reserves at any given time because you never know what's going to happen. We always try to eliminate debt, and then we're monitoring their working capital, which is similar to their cash reserves. But, if the more leverage you are with debt, in my mind, you're just anything that bad that happens could completely knock you off the ledge. And so that's just kind of, in my opinion, some things that we should be watching for. And lastly, I would say, what are your goals and your targets? And are you monitoring those? We talk about goals and targets for, your vision. But if you said, I want to make $1 million this year in revenue, how are you going to do that? And are you keeping yourself accountable every month to do it? And I think that the economy has just kind of, I don't know what the right word is. I said, we've been living in the fat maybe, and we haven't had to worry about those things. It's just happened. But how focused are you on your goals and your targets? And do you have those kinds of goals? Are you monitoring those things? So again, that's just, Walter, that's kind of my opinion on what we're going to have to do over the next, I guess, moving forward in general, even as the economy roars back, which it will, in my mind, I'd still keep this in the back of your head. Like, what if something like this happens again? I do believe that we're covered by the blood, but we also need to use wisdom too.
I would agree with you, Phil. So I'm going to take you guys back in history. From 95 to 1999, that was one of the greatest technology booms. If you had a .com Y2K company, you made, 300, 400%. I don't know if you guys remember the commercials, pets.com, everything.com came out, and those stocks were trading at multiples of, 300 times their earnings. Then all of a sudden, there was a shaking. September 11th happened, the market dropped 40, 50%, and then everybody thought the sky was falling. Fast forward 2008, we had the subprime lending, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley. Some of those companies went under because they repurposed real estate and bought, government bonds and everything else, mortgage-backed securities. Had another drop in the market, 50%. Fast forward to where we are right now. And I would agree with you, Phil. Through every shaking, there comes opportunity. There becomes a new economy. What I believe what you're saying by the Spirit, Phil, is that we need to be spending more time with God, in communion with brothers who are like-minded on one accord, so that we can find out where the next move is. There might have to be some changes inside your business that you might have to implement, strategies like you're talking about, Phil, so you can take full advantage of it. And what I believe is, and I'll be honest with you guys and be transparent, God had been pricking me and showing me, hey, I've been a financial advisor for 20 plus years. Every time I've seen all-time highs on the Dow Jones at 10,000, at 14,000, at 29,000, there's always been a correction. And God had started showing me this in October. Hey, we're at all-time highs. How much higher are you going to get to? But like a person who wasn't really listening, I could have protected my clients. I could have took 20, 30% and removed it to cash and could be buying right now for my clients. As a result of that, my business has dropped 30%, when you look at from 29 down to 18,000 of the Dow Jones. So I would agree with you. This has forced me to open my eyes and listen more to the Holy Spirit instead of listening to Walter Russell and what Walter Russell wants to do. So I would agree with that, Phil. So fellas, I'm probably just going to do a random check. Do you guys like this? Because what we really want to do is we really want to add value. There's no sense getting together at 8 o'clock on a Thursday evening or getting together with brothers if you guys don't see that this is adding value. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to blow you guys up and sending a whole bunch of texts and stalking you guys on Facebook if you guys don't feel that this is value. So Kevin Mason, do you think this is adding value?
I enjoyed this. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate the invite. And thank you for stalking me, Walter.
Okay. Roger, what about you, sir?
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I would definitely be into doing something regularly.
Okay. Rich, I'm calling on you, buddy. Can you hear me? He gave us a thumbs up. Yeah. So that's what we really want to do. I mean, because what I believe is a lot of resources are already in the house of Faith Life Church. What we really need to do is connect, and because we really don't have a business network, there are a lot of things that we can pull from each other. Gary Vinson, if you don't mind me, he threw a thumbs up as well. Gary owns Kitchen Tables and More. I'm just gonna give him a shout out. Anybody who's looking for a kitchen table, right off of over there by Easton, you can see the sign when you go over 270. But he's been in business, and I consider him a friend and a mentor. And I know that, this situation is, probably affecting his business tremendously. And so I feel like, as we go through this, if there's anything that people need prayer for, feel free to reach out to each other and, let's pray for each other's need. One of the things, go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm available anytime. If anybody needs help or advice or anything I can do, I'd be glad to share with you and help you any way I can. Feel free to take my cell number or email and reach out to me. You're right, Walter, I've been in business 41 years with Kitchen Tables and More. So I, have a little bit of history and can maybe steer you in some different ways. I didn't want to interrupt while Phil was talking, but we did apply for the PPP 3 different times. Finally got the final application in to Park National Bank on Monday. We got an answer on Tuesday that it was approved by the SBA, and they gave me a number and said, we don't know how funding will go from here, but you're officially approved. Just an FYI for you guys. That's kind of where I am.
Cool.
So I had a quick question. Actually, Gary, can you pass your phone number as well? That's my primary bank as well. And I talked to them a few times. They said they were passing along my accounts and everything to their 3 hubs that they're pulling the loans from. And I talked to them again today because I told them that, I think, Thursday. And so they said they've been inundated, of course, understandably. And the last I heard, it was like a day turnaround, but I still hadn't heard anything. So today I'd asked, and they're submitting it again. So you said you submitted it 3 times?
Well, yeah, the first time my banker there at Park National told me this is what we think the application is going to look like. So this was a week and a half ago. So immediately I got it filled out and sent it back in. Didn't hear anything. A couple days went by. And then they said, well, this is more like what we think the application is going to look like. So I filled that one out. And then on Sunday, I think I got an email saying this is the official application. So I got that submitted. Let's see, I think that was Sunday we submitted that. Sunday or Monday. But yeah, let me give you my cell number. It's 614-419-0267. I turned my video on, but I can't figure out which button to push so you guys, because I know some of you guys don't know who I am and what I look like, but I can't figure out what button to push. So.
Well, no, I appreciate that.
There
you go. Yeah, because they haven't even given me the application. From their point, I had just asked my banker. I said, "Hey, what do you think?" And they're like, "Well, we'll send your accounts over to our hub, and then they'll touch base with you here in about 24 hours." And I was like, "Okay, that's it." I'm thinking so. I appreciate that. So if I do have any more questions, if they don't touch base with me tomorrow, I may shoot you a text.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
So I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Walter, I think this is a huge asset, especially since we're locked up in our houses kind of right now. I think different, on the fire teams, you guys can all, kind of talk and figure out different subjects and things like that. But I really do. I want to thank you for shooting me a text because definitely helps. So thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, Phil.
And honestly, my ultimate goal is to help. I love connecting the dots. I love bringing people together. Because I know that, God will, continue to increase my business and kind of going from there. So, but I appreciate you guys. So the last thing of what I would love to do is if you guys are interested, we'd like to do this again. Next week, if you don't mind, I'm going to have Josh Deanny. He's an attorney who goes to our church. I'm going to have him talk a little bit about estate planning. Might be a little bit boring for people. But, during this day and time, what we're starting to see is a lot of people fast track their estate planning, if they're in the healthcare industry. And I believe this is a great time to talk about wills, probate, trusts, and all that other fun stuff. So I'm going to get him on the line. He was supposed to be on the call this evening, but at least, like I said, I like to keep people informed and prepared and everything else like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up if everybody could shoot me, I think I've got most of you guys' numbers, but I'm going to start doing like weekly broadcasts, just sending this stuff out. We are going to videotape these so that if you're not able to make them, then I'll share them on a Facebook page or something like that. Because like I said, I like to keep people informed. But the last thing what I would love to do, and if somebody could do this, is I believe that part of our thing is we're blessed to be a blessing. If anybody in the call has a need or know where there's a need, that we all could maybe chip in $25 to $100 that we can sow as men of God into. This is outside our tithe, and this is outside our normal giving. If there's a food pantry or something else that we can all come in agreement with, I would love to see us do that. As men of God, just to help people out. There's a lot of people that are hurting. I know last night the church went to the Mount Carmel East. We were there my wife was there last night. I was at Mount Carmel or St. Anne's in Westerville Friday ago. And it was really powerful to see the nurses coming out crying, just
I
for
saw you on the news, Walter.
Yeah, just holding up a little pink sign saying thank you and everything else like that. But that's what I really think God is calling us for in this time, is to be leaders, not only in our home, but also in our community. So if somebody can come up with something that we can donate a couple of bucks, if you can't donate, no harm, no foul, but I would love to help us donate something, to, something out there. So if somebody wants to come up with a mention of something, then we could do that.
I really like that idea. I think that's a great idea.
Because what my goal is I'm hoping next week we can get double and just keep on going. Once the social distancing is broken up, maybe we could meet, for breakfast or something else like that. We can change it in person. Paul Rankin from Chick-fil-A, he was supposed to be on the call. I'm sure I'm sure I can bend his arm. Maybe we can meet over at his location on an early morning and get some free breakfast from him. He owes me a couple of favors and everything else like that. So, but we can talk about that once this social distancing goes up. So,
Yeah, sounds good. I
hey,
like it.
Mr. Garner, can I have you close us in prayer if you're there? Mark?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, buddy.
Awesome, man. It was good. I appreciate the time, man. I don't know everybody on here, so hey. Father, we just want to come to you right now in Jesus' name. It's just awesome, Lord, to have these wonderful men gathered together, Father, just to continue just to connect, not only physically, but spiritually as well, Father. Just continue dependent upon you to give us guidance and direction, Lord, to implement, to continue to take territory, Father. We just ask for clarity and understanding to be able to apply in every situation, Father. We thank you, Lord, that we walk in peace and confidence, knowing, Lord, that you have everything worked out for us. We thank you, Father, for Walter taking the initiative to set this up. We just speak blessings of favor on each and everyone's families. We thank you, Lord, just for, it's just the opportunity to even have technology, just even have this, Father. Stay-at-home order kind of sucks, but we know, Lord, that you always work things out for the good of all of us. So we give praise to you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, fellas, I appreciate it. Shoot me if you have any questions. You can text me, Facebook me, email me, but I'll get a list together and we'll just keep on going from there. And feel free to invite other guys next week so we can continue to grow this and go from there.
Thanks, Walter. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Love you. Talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Walter.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Phil.